Hey everybody! Do you remember the Nike slogan, "Just Do It"? This morning I watched the very first Nike Just Do It commercial that ever aired. It was first run in 1988 and it featured an 80-year-old man named Walt Stack who ran 17 miles every morning. It showed him running across the Golden State Bridge in his Nikes. And it ended by showing that famous slogan, "Just Do It," in white letters on a black screen. Today we're going to be looking at Luke chapter 10, starting in verse 25. On one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. "Teacher," he asked, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" Verse 26, Jesus replied, "What is written in the law? How do you read it?" He answered, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself." "You have answered correctly," Jesus replied. "Do this, and you will live." If you can truly love God, love Him enough to love other people as much as or more than you love yourself, then you will live, Jesus says. Here you will start to live the life you were meant to live, one characterized by fulfillment and effectiveness, one absent of fear and worry, if you can love God with everything you have and love your neighbor as yourself. Verse 29, but he wanted to justify himself. So he asked Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" What does the text mean by justify himself? This guy wants to justify himself. It could mean that he is so desperate to find a way to save him. He wants to make sure he has all the details right. He wants to make sure that he understands all the loopholes, all the potential pitfalls, so that he can know for sure that what he is doing will save himself. He wants to make sure he doesn't miss anything. Some of us are like that. Verse 30, Jesus said, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, they beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead." Verse 13, a priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. That's verse 31. A religious leader who supposedly represented God walks past this man in desperate need as far away as he could, on the other side of the road apparently, without even pausing. Why? Well, it could be that he was afraid of becoming unclean in accordance with Jewish ceremonial laws. You know, if you touch a dead body, you'll be unclean for 7 days. And maybe he was concerned with the law more than he was concerned with the soul of this man, a human being, made in the image of God. Verse 32, so too a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, this poor man, passed by on the other side. Once again, a man who's supposed to be close to God, one of the priestly class, sees the man and walks right past. Perhaps it was out of fear that the bandits might still be nearby. He needed to protect himself first, of course. Verse 33, but a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was. Now remember, the Jews and the Samaritans hated each other. When hearing this parable, the audience would see the Samaritan as the obvious villain simply because he was a Samaritan. They would assume that he would at least pass by, like the other two characters did, by either because he was evil or because he had been treated badly by the Jews in the first place and he wouldn't want to help a Jew who is in need. But Jesus is a master storyteller, and he's about to shock his listeners with what he says next. And when the Samaritan saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him," he said, "and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you have made." This Samaritan, every single thing he does is one step higher. And ultimately, he opens himself up to being taken advantage of when he tells the innkeeper, "I'll pay you any extra expenses you have to pay." Verse 36, Jesus has ended his parable and he looks at his audience. He looks at this expert in the law and he says, Which of these three do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers?" The expert of the law replied, "The one who had mercy on him." Now notice what Jesus has done here. In a profound way, he has flipped the question. The expert of the law wanted to know who should he count as his neighbors. Jesus tells the young man, it's not about who is a neighbor to you, it's about being a neighbor to others. In other words, he turns it from selfish focus to selfless focus. It's also important to note that the two men that passed by the man who'd been beaten by the robber in Jesus' parable were experts in the law, which is just like the man who's asking the question. So who is your neighbor? I heard someone put it this way: it's anyone who's in need. Who might God be asking you to go out of your way to minister to right now? Look at Jesus' reply to this man. The man said, "It's the one who had mercy on him." And then Jesus told him, "Go and do likewise." What did Jesus say here? He's saying, just do it.